1. What has happened in Venezuela? The core event in early January 2026, the United States conducted a covert military operation in Venezuela that resulted in the capture of Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro and his wife and their transfer to the US on criminal charges. The Trump administration has declared it will effectively run Venezuela temporarily to oversee a transition of power. Trump's statement made clear boots on the ground are not off the table if necessary. Trump framed the mission as part of combating narco-terrorism and reclaiming lost U.S. corporate oil assets. The move was not authorized by Congress, raising legal and constitutional questions. This kind of direct military intervention and regime removal, especially without legislative mandate, breaks with U.S. precedent in the Western Hemisphere and international norms about state sovereignty. 2. Immediate international reactions. Tensions are rising. Regional backlash. Several Latin American governments, including Spain, Brazil, Chile, Colombia, Mexico, and Uruguay, have condemned the operation as a dangerous precedent that jeopardizes peace and violates international law. Global responses. Allied governments are split, some praising U.S. leadership, others warning of instability. Critics argue the intervention could encourage other nations to emulate unilateral force, potentially weakening international norms. Domestic U.S. debate. Figures across U.S. political parties, from former Vice President Kamala Harris to congressional critics, have called the action illegal, unwise, and destabilizing. 3. Why analysts are warning of global turbulence. A. Erosion of international norms. By intervening militarily without clear international sanction or UN approval, the US challenges post-World War II global order norms that have discouraged unilateral regime change and promoted multilateral diplomacy. This risks encouraging counter-interventions by other powers, breakdown of established dispute resolution systems, a more unstable global security environment. Historically, such precedents have contributed to cycles of conflict, distrust, and geopolitical competition. B. Latin American political volatility. The operation undercuts regional non-intervention principles. Condemnations from neighboring states could lead to diplomatic isolation of the U.S. in the region, strengthened alliances among countries opposed to external military action, spikes in popular protest and civil conflict within Venezuela. Venezuela's military and civilian factions remain divided. A power vacuum or civil conflict could easily expand beyond its borders. Council on Foreign Relations. C. Oil market instability. Venezuela holds the largest proven oil reserves in the world. Field right-pointing small triangle. Disruption in Venezuelan production, due to conflict, reconstruction delays, or political uncertainty, can affect global oil prices and energy security, particularly for Europe, Latin America, and Asia. Field right-pointing small triangle. Plans to overhaul the industry under U.S. management could trigger further geopolitical competition over energy supply and influence. D. Geopolitical rivalries. China, Russia, and Iran have deep ties with Venezuela, from oil to military cooperation. Trump's intervention challenges their influence in Latin America, may push these powers into more aggressive countermeasures globally, risks turning Venezuela into a broader proxy arena for U.S. versus rival powers. D. Broader security flashpoints. Experts note that when major powers take bold, unilateral actions in one region, other tense flashpoints, e.g., Taiwan, Middle East disputes, North Korea, may become more unpredictable as rival states reassess risk thresholds. 4. Economic and humanitarian implications. Humanitarian fallout. There are fears of escalating displacement, hunger, and chaos inside Venezuela if conflict intensifies. Council on Foreign Relations. Global markets. Equity and bond markets are sensitive to geopolitical risk and uncertainty around Venezuela. U.S. policy continuity and oil output adds volatility. Investopedia. Migration pressures. Renewed instability could lead to waves of migration beyond current flows, affecting neighboring countries and the U.S. southern border. 5. What happens next? Turbulent scenarios. Short-term, weeks, months. Continued diplomatic fallout and regional conflict risk oil price volatility. Possible retaliatory actions by Venezuela loyalists or allied states. Medium-term, 3 to 12 months, ongoing debates over U.S. presence or withdrawal, potential escalation into broader regional conflict if Venezuela fragments, rival powers increase their geopolitical engagement long-term, 1 to 2 years, redrawing of alliances, shift in Latin American political alignments, long-lasting impact on U.S. global leadership credibility. Experts warn that the effect of such intervention may not settle quickly. The world could be living with consequences long after the initial event. Trump's Venezuela action is not just another geopolitical episode. It deeply challenges international norms, shifts power balances, and introduces a high degree of unpredictability into global affairs. Whether through diplomatic rifts, energy markets, military escalation, or geopolitical rivalries, the aftershocks could indeed drive months or even years of global turbulence. August 2025, the Trump administration expanded a military campaign against drug cartels in Latin America, including increased naval deployments and a higher bounty on Maduro related to U.S. indictments. U.S. pressure continues with naval patrols, air operations, and sanctions aimed at Venezuela's military and economy, intensifying regional tensions. Background context: night of Jan 2-3. A large-scale U.S. military operation targeting Caracas and surrounding regions begins in the early hours. Multiple explosions and airstrikes hit government and military sites. Around 2 a.m., Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro and his wife Cilia Flores are captured by U.S. forces during the raid. Shortly after, Maduro and Flores are flown out of Venezuela, reportedly via the USS Iwo Jima, and transported to New York, where they face federal charges including narcotics trafficking and terrorism-related offenses. President Trump publicly confirms the operation as successful, calls it spectacular, and states the U.S. will temporarily run Venezuela until a transition occurs. Trump frames it as part of combating narco-terrorism and restoring order, also emphasizing potential involvement of U.S. oil companies. The UN Security Council schedules an emergency meeting to discuss the U.S. intervention amid international controversy. Globe country by country and international reactions. Argentina President Javier Milei, pro-Trump, expresses support for U.S. action and views removing Maduro as progress toward freedom. Brazil President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva condemns the operation as crossing an unacceptable line, violating international law and risking global instability. Colombia President Gustavo Petro denounces the U.S. strike and mobilizes forces on the Venezuelan border amid concerns about refugees. Foreign policy. Cuba President Miguel Diaz-Canel condemns the move as state terrorism and a breach of international law. Cuba, heavily dependent on Venezuelan oil, views this as a direct threat. China strongly opposes the U.S. strike, calling it a violation of sovereignty and international law. Beijing demands Maduro's release and warns of broader regional impact. Russia's foreign ministry calls the U.S. action armed aggression, condemning it and reaffirming support for Venezuela. Israel Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu praises Trump's leadership and the operation, framing it as effective U.S. action. France and Germany, EU, several Western European leaders, like Macron, and EU officials, urge restraint, respect for international law, and a peaceful democratic transition, while not directly endorsing the military action. United Kingdom Prime Minister Keir Starmer says the UK wants to first establish facts and discusses upholding international law before offering a firm stance. Mexico's president cites the UN Charter and criticizes use of force against territorial integrity and political independence. Chile, mixed, left-leaning leaders condemn the intervention, right-leaning voices welcome the end of Maduro. Al Jazeera North Korea officially condemns the U.S. intervention as a violation of the UN Charter and acts of hegemonic aggression. Flag United Nations Secretary-General Antonio Guterres expresses deep concern, warning the operation could violate international law and set a dangerous precedent. Venezuelan officials, notably Vice President Delcy Rodriguez, reject Maduro's removal, demand proof of life, and assert his legitimacy. She has claimed interim leadership per Venezuelan legal order. Venezuelan military forces remain a key stabilizing factor, and mass protests, pro and anti-Maduro, appear in urban centers.